Hello and welcome. Today we have Alex Fleischmann, Head of Market Development International at TIPCO, who's going to talk about transforming Treasury processes into workflows. Welcome, Alex.
Hello, Jack.
So what are we talking about here? What are we really looking at here?
Well, when we talk about workflows in a Treasury context, what we are really talking about is the connection of people, infrastructure, software, and data to, as efficiently as possible, provide different kinds of services in a Treasury context. That would be what we think about when we talk about Treasury workflows in a nutshell.
Okay, so to make it a bit clearer, what's the basics of all Treasury processes? Explain, because this really sums it all up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, when you think about some of the most common processes in a Treasury department, like a subsidiary requesting a new bank account, for example, or a new intercompany loan, a new bank guarantee. In all of these processes, typically somebody requests something, then somebody needs to check the request, approve or deny it, and finally, the new account or the new loan, the new guarantee needs to find its way into all relevant systems, like an ERP, maybe TMS, some other system, payments tool, some other departments need to be informed, etc. And what we find is that in the majority of Treasury departments, these processes are still triggered via email in the majority of cases, and then they are handled from start to finish via email or a combination of email and spreadsheets, even when a Treasury management system is in place. And this is where our workflows come in.
So if we look at a corporate Treasury department where that doesn't have these workflows.
Sure, let's take a look at how things typically go when there are no proper system-supported workflows in place. On the left of this slide, in this sort of thunderstorm of emails and spreadsheets, you have requests coming in, changes being requested, prolongations of existing loans, for example, or a subsidiary telling Treasury that an account should be closed, etc. Treasury takes a look at this, has follow-up questions, needs to give approvals, initiates reviews, etc., etc. And all of this, when it's handled via email and spreadsheets, to be absolutely honest, it can turn into quite a mess. Especially when you consider that there's also the requirement to forward all of this information regarding bank accounts, loans, foreign exchange deals and guarantees, to forward all data on all of these to other people, to other departments, to other systems. So there's a lot of manual rekeying necessary on the right side of this slide here to actually get this data where it needs to go. And in terms of reporting to, for example, internal audit or back to the subsidiaries, this is also typically then time consuming and requires a lot of manual work.
Now that sounds pretty normal to me. So let's look at a department where there is workflows.
Let's take, or let's use the example of bank account management when there is a workflow in place. In step one, the subsidiary requests a new bank account from Group Treasury or with Group Treasury. The subsidiary logs in to TIP, our Treasury information platform, and enters the request. In step two, a Group Treasury user takes a look at the request, checks if all required data is available, maybe asks for some additions back to the subsidiary user, and then the request goes on. Maybe there's a four eyes principle in place where a second Group Treasury user in step three is tasked with finally approving the request. And ideally, we have an electronic process in place allowing us to forward that request to the bank fully automatically, typically referred to as eBAM, electronic bank account management, so that the bank can start dealing with the request. The banks then, once the KYC topic is out of the way, once all required documentation was provided, would open the requested account. And this information, again, could be transferred back to TIP fully electronically, fully automatically via SWIFT, for example. And this is when the new account can finally be opened, is finally activated in TIP, and from there, it can be automatically transferred to all other systems that need information on this account. TMS, ERP, e-banking or cash management tools. And also, throughout the entire life cycle, we can always report on what's going on. There's a full audit trail from start to finish, so that even internal audit is happy about what we're doing here.
So it's probably best to actually have a short demo to explain that, because that sounds very simple and clear, but how clear is it when you actually do it? Let's have a short demo.
Suppose that I'm a subsidiary user wanting to request a new bank account with Group Treasury. All I need to do is I click a button, Request Bank Account, and a new window pops up. A very simple request entry mask where I'm tasked to state the purpose of the new account, the account classification. It should be used for incoming and outgoing payments. And I need this account in, say, Germany. And it should be a Euro account, which I require from mid-January onwards. All I need to do is I click on Save, and the request is automatically transferred into the workflow. Let's take a look at the workflow itself. If I take a look at my account opening section of my bank account workflow, what we see here is that besides my currently active accounts, I have 672 active accounts in the system. There are various workflow steps for various sub-processes. In this example, account opening, there are recorded requests, there are actual requests in the system, then the item travels to an account in opening process stage, and so on and so forth. And similarly, other workflow steps exist for different processes like confirmation of accounts, changes, and so on and so forth. What I find in here is the request I just entered available here in the system. Now, I could go in and edit the request again. Yeah. But if I decide, no, that's fine, everything is correct, then I can just go in and send off the request to Group Treasury. Now, Group Treasury sees this as a new workflow item to take a look at. So at Group Treasury level, the task is now to review the subsidiary's request. I can easily do that by opening the request. And at this stage, Group Treasury, for example, is tasked with selecting the relevant bank at which this new bank account should be opened. So for example, I could go in and say, okay, this should be opened with Deutsche Bank Stuttgart. And all along the other workflow steps, information is added, information is completed, but from start to finish, this process takes place in one tool. So there's an audit trail from start to finish, and there's only one source of truth. What do I mean by that? Maybe just a very quick look. If I look at my active accounts, I have them grouped by various criteria. Like my different company codes, my bank groups, my currencies, etc. I can look for only certain accounts. For example, I can easily say, okay, only show me my euro accounts, and the system only shows me my group-wide euro accounts. And then the great thing is, for any account in here, I have all information about all historic movements, changes, etc. regarding this account. So I can just open an account's history and see when it was initially added or imported, whenever something changed regarding signatory rights, when was the last confirmation that the account static data is still correct, etc., etc. And I have full access to any comments that were ever captured by a responsible person for this particular account. So this means full transparency, full accountability, and all of the data can be easily passed on to other systems. So there is full automation from start to finish as well.
And then where are we in the process? You've just account requested, it's now in the opening process.
If I now said on group treasury level, okay, I approve this request, everything is fine with that so far, I selected for which or at which bank this new account should be opened, I just have to click approve request, and then the item, as you correctly stated, moves to the next step, account in opening process. So this is when I reach out to the bank, optimally, again, fully electronically via an eBAM process. The whole KYC topic starts before the account is then finally opened and interfaced back to the system.
So you brought all the pieces together, basically, haven't you? All the parties and the systems and the communication, it's all in TIP.
That is correct. Just maybe one note regarding this. When it comes to support of this fully electronic flow, we are at this stage still very much dependent on what the banks can do. Our finding is that more and more banks actively start looking into this, but it's still a key requirement for the bank being able to process the files we deliver as well.
But in terms of internally within the Treasury Department, the whole process, whatever process we're looking at, is internal within TIP. So
That is
all the pieces.
That is absolutely correct. So some of our clients manage thousands of accounts using our system. Some of our clients manage thousands of bank guarantees in this fashion. So whenever the key requirement is to keep track of what's going on, this is the optimum tool for that.
So if you bring all this together, what are the main benefits of using TIP Treasury workflows?
One of the key benefits is definitely the topic of traceability and transparency. As we have a full audit trail from start to finish, the treasurer can always answer the question, who did what at what stage? And this is great to just have this full overview across the entire group in terms of bank accounts, guarantees, or whatever process we are dealing with here. So there's one global source of truth, which is not dispersed in various emails or spreadsheets. And when it becomes really interesting is when we also automate the interfacing of whatever data we are managing here to other systems, TMS, ERPs, etc., in order to enable a real straight-through process from start to finish, from the initial request to the final transaction actually going where it needs to go. And last but not least, the topic of process optimization. What we find time and time again working on workflow projects is that this really gives treasury departments the chance to rethink their processes, to take a look whether everything is already done in the optimum way, And then during the initial conceptual phase, if you want, when we draw flowcharts, etc., they really have the chance to improve the process and then put this improved process into a system designed for the job. So inefficiencies are eliminated.
Yes, I'm not sure that's always the case, is it? I mean, there must be, what are the difficulties with doing this? Do people change their process? What's the reaction to changing things?
I fully agree. This is not always an easy task because people tend to get used to their existing processes. But our experience really is that when there's reason to reconsider certain elements of the process, I'm not saying that entire processes are typically bad or need to be changed in their entirety, but bits and pieces clients typically identify as this is something we could do better. And then a workflow project, putting a tool in place to support this particular process is a good chance to make things even better than they were before.
This is an obvious thing to do, but why hasn't everybody done it? Why isn't everyone doing it?
That's a very valid question. From our perspective, it's 2019 and people are all excited about AI and big data and robotics and so on. Yet at the same time, in most treasuries, there's still high reliance on email spreadsheets, etc. If you look at the most recent Deloitte Global Corporate Treasury Survey, which you just reported on CTMfile, Deloitte highlights that almost half the treasurers out there face challenges by inadequate treasury systems. And our big advantage here is that from the very start, we focused on optimum integration with other systems, with other tools. We don't say that everything needs to happen in TIP, but we consider the entire process from start to finish and then tailor the workflow to the client's requirements. And the feedback we receive here is our clients like the ease of use, the time savings by having all this data in one spot, and then being able to automatically push all this data to other systems is really the cherry on the cake. And in this context, not all vendors are as open to engage with other tools out there. I think there is one of the big differences.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I think this is a very important way of improving the efficiency of the overall corporate treasury department. Thank you very much.
I think the same way. Thanks a lot, Jack.